how do you understand activism, or what would be your best definition of activism?
Good question. I guess it depends on the person you ask the question, really. I would say what it should be is more a case of, if you see a situation that requires a response, you should respond, but respond accordingly. That would probably be my definition.
Yeah, lovely. And to what extent would you say that your life so far has been informed by that definition that you've given?
I think all of our lives have been impacted some way, whether you've chose to respond to the required call or not, really. Whether that triggers conversations and scenarios you find in your personal social circles, or what you view via media, the news, your social media timelines. It's everywhere, really, whether you choose to ignore it or not. So I'd say, yeah, I think it impacts us all in various different ways. It just depends on what you choose to do about it.
And what have you chosen to do about it?
Create my organisation, Reform Pursuit. So ultimately, I've looked at being a black man first and foremost, ever since I was young, learning the history of our culture and the impact it's had on us all, and how it's shaped the world that we know as things stand. And then I had to decide what can I actively do about that. I think the final, like they say, the straw that broke the camel's back is probably, for most of us from last year's in 2020 to 2021, the death of George Floyd, the impact of quarantines and lockdowns, and how it's actually channeled everybody's scope, I guess, to what is actually important. And with the death of George Floyd, a tragic incident scattered across social media, everybody being in a position where they have time to focus, became conscious of the issues again. There's no chance to hide from. And at that point, I had to decide what contribution could I offer to the problem? What solutions could I bring to the table, really? And I look at the legal system, irrespective of what country you live in, what your beliefs are. Ultimately, the laws of the land govern the society, right? And from a psychological perspective, that will usually determine your behaviors as far as what you may or may not be able to do and what the consequences are. So I thought to myself, well, it's probably best to focus on the legal system and then try to find points where we can push for reforms to existing laws, and how that could actually impact, or what psychological impacts could that have on racial abusers, people that actually go around making us feel the way we feel, whether they are in positions of authority where they've got certain jobs and they can prevent you from promotions, etc., or whether it's your children at school and what their lifestyle's like. And it goes on and on, irrespective of what space you occupy. It was more a case of, well, I believe to have any impact, we need to address the legal system. Myself and a number of my close friends, we came together with a concept and an idea, and we've pushed through ever since, really. We're almost 1 year into the idea, and here we are.
Along that journey then, do you feel that you have kind of consciously looked at what you're doing as sort of activism or resistance, or do you feel that it's very much just in who you are, so very much a sort of intrinsic part of your character, of your nature? You know, where do you draw? Do you actually draw a distinction?
It's a good question. I think what come to my mind when you asked the question was, it was almost like, what would they call it? It was like waking up almost the beast within. Probably not the appropriate words, but I've always had a certain outlook on life. I've always been conscious of our Black history, but you get on with life. Your priorities change. You focus on different things, and as I say, I think when what happened to George Floyd happened, it reawoke the desire to actually have a contribution, and the contribution being my organisation really was was the only response that I could think of, and also networking and trying to connect with those that are of a similar mindset, that actively want to do something about the situation and have realistic, tangible, productive ways to go about doing this,
It's nice to hear that it was literally something that was very much already part of who you were as Dwayne before Reform Pursuit, that there was this somewhat dormant element within, and really what awoken and triggered that fire within just unfortunately happened to be the events of last year. But I think what that does say is that your response or activism doesn't necessarily need to be you on the sort of front lines of the sort of protests or marches.
Exactly.
There's a lot more to activism than that. And this was your way of actually conveying, that dissatisfaction, and more to the point, your sense of outrage, with what was happening, not only across the Atlantic, but within the UK context. So yeah, very, very powerful. And to your understanding, how important do you think nation building or activism is to the nation building agenda within the Black community?
I think it's critical. If we don't group together, everybody has a different viewpoint on what the solution is, right? But if there's no unity between all of the many, then you'll just have individuals. There's a saying, united we stand. So I think it's critical not for the likes of myself to go around and tell everybody, oh no, you've got to do what I say, you've got to follow my organization. No, this is what I think can contribute. If you have something else that's feasible as well, then let's work together and create an actual effective community. There's so many of us with great minds and great ideas, but the strength comes with the unity. So my mindset is more a case of we all have to work as a collective. Let's group together. Let's look at various different solutions. If there's a pocket that I can fill, brilliant. If there's a pocket that another set of individuals can fill, then that's great. And just create that community. We can't look back. We must look forward, and we must be very focused on being productive. Let's not be viewers or consumers of the problem. Let's play a part in the actual solution itself. Let's get up and do something about it,
Gosh, yeah, that's a very, very well expressed way to account for things, and I think that is part of the problem. I think we are, in the main, viewers and consumers of the problem, and not many of us lend our strength, lend our arms, lend our abilities towards the solution. But hopefully conversations like this will actually provoke people to think otherwise, so.
Yeah.
And, if you look at the word activism over the years, I think it generally comes with, I think the sort of consensus is that it comes with generally negative connotations. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it has had such a bad press historically and to current date?
I think in many cases that has been a part of the agenda by the opposition, is for those that, Martin Luther King, for example, my understanding was he was inspired by peaceful protests, which I believe were led by various different sections of Buddhism, a form of peaceful demonstration, but yet still they faced a lot of bad media, horrific treatment, police brutality, etc., etc. So irrespective of whether you're out smashing windows and creating all kinds of vandalism and whatever else, or whether you're being peaceful, the fact that you choose to stand against the oppression, you will be smeared. There will be propaganda. There will be various different media campaigns to make you look bad. So I think irrespective, regardless of which way you go about the general activism type stance, then with that will come negative press. So myself, for example, in recent times where you had a wave across the UK of nearly every weekend, central London, there was protests. I'd never really been one to have confidence or faith in protest. And I felt obliged to actually turn up to a few. And for the moment, you're there, you think, yeah, this is good, I feel like I've done something good today. But as I said, I'd walk away and I'd think to myself, well, what contribution have I actually provided? I went out, I vented my expressions, and then I went back to work on Monday. So what have I actually done to provide a solution? And that was why the decision was made that as you say, from an activist type position or perspective, we need to be more creative. We need to be more dynamic, more diverse, more innovative as to what other solutions can you bring, rather than just turning up and throwing your banners up.
Absolutely. What you're saying is that we need to be more rounded in our approach and our response, and more comprehensive. And I think nation building actually calls for that diversity, that range of ability, skills, talents, thought, and everything in between. Because a nation is comprised of the people and the institutions that follow from the people, but ultimately it begins with the people. So yeah, absolutely. What do you think is one very simple form? Because I think for a lot of people, activism seems quite abstract. It seems quite distant from their reality. Not everyone wants to protest. And because, unfortunately, as you say, the media and the state essentially have an agenda in which they choose to frame activism, I think people have a very narrow understanding of what it means. So it's either you protest or you do nothing, for most people. Yeah. So give us a sense of what you feel is a sort of daily kind of expression of activism at work, that we could all kind of get down with, that isn't too onerous, that doesn't really kind of overstretch people beyond, their comfort zone, dare I say?
I would say identify. I mean, any individual could probably, if they chose to, because it all begins with choice, right? So if you chose to look at a number of different issues in society, maybe you could put together a list of problems, and out of the large list that you would end up constructing, you could then say to yourself, well, out of all of these issues, is there anything that I could actually do about this? Do I have, like, for example, on my social circle, whether that's a circle of 5 or 10 or 20 people, out of all of those individuals, do any of them have a potential skill set that could add value to my idea, whatever the idea may be? A lot of us, our social circles have changed for the better. One of your friends might be a web designer, somebody else is a specialist in social media, somebody else has, very good social skills, and you could actually look at all the different skill sets. And if you had an idea but you as an individual didn't have the ability to pull it all off, draw on your circles, pull everybody together, try and get everyone on the same page. And I think there's a pro and a con to that, because you may find when you take that viewpoint, your social circle are not actually a productive circle to revolve in or evolving, and that may make you question your circle itself, right? But it's probably for the best, So I would say, yeah, you look at the problems, you think of what solution you can do, and you apply yourself accordingly. A lot of us, and this is another thing as well to bear in mind, and I don't want to go off the question, but sometimes we have to look at what our motives are. I mean, you have a lot of people that are career driven. They'll work day and night and go all out for their employer, but when it comes to being or providing some kind of solution to the problem that we face as Black people, all of a sudden they can't find any time. But they could find time to binge through Netflix series, and I do that myself too, right? But I also do what I'm doing now. So I think it's,
Absolutely.
it's all about what you really take serious, and time management. Look at your day. Ask yourself if you've got enough capacity to start to actually help providing solutions. Don't say to yourself, oh, I helped out one of my friends and he was in a problem or whatever, and that was good enough. No, it's not good enough. I think sometimes we could be more harder on ourselves to actually bring the best out of ourselves. Sometimes the system or the structure can almost make you lazy. You feel like if you've done
Yes.
your job and everything's nice in the house, then you've done something good for the community, when actually you haven't. You've just done something good for yourself. I think we need to become, as a people, more conscious of the big picture, to then really say, well, actually, I'm not doing enough. I could definitely do some more.
100%. With so much competing for our attention, and attempting to distract us, how do we sustain our commitment to activism? So how do you find that you're able to keep going? Because, like I said, many started this journey last year.
Yeah.
Many have dropped off, So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think the short answer to your question is discipline, and maybe the longer answer with not many words is long-term focus. Ever since, and some, not all of us are either committed or born with that natural ability. Myself, for example, ever since I was young, I've always had the mindset to look very far forward, like very far forward. And in my mind, if I envision achieving a target 1 year later, in my mind, it's already there. So I don't ever feel, like a lack of confidence in achieving whatever that goal was. I just feel like, yeah, it's there. And I'm just trying to convince everybody else that it's there to be obtained. I remember when I was probably like 7 years old, for example, I used to look at the Argos catalogs and things like that, right? And I'd look at my favorite toy and I'd say, yeah,
Me
Mum,
too.
yeah, I want this. And all year, I'd be focused on this one toy. I'd literally just look at the toy, and in my mind, I had the toy, and I'd get the toy. I hear a lot of people use certain terms now. They say things like, I can't remember the words now, laws of attraction and things like that. But that concept or that mindset, for some of us, that's actually just been something that you always had before you heard the term or read the books.
Yeah.
So I think it's more a case of, do you see what I mean? It's more a case of knowing to yourself, this is what we set out to do. This isn't just for the moment. This isn't just for the limelight. This is what we're going to do, and we are not going to stop until we get there. And for those that, whether they're part of my organization or your organization or all the others around the globe, the individuals that don't stay on, they were never going to add value anyway. So it's almost like a filtering process. As long as you have a few core members that genuinely appreciate or can see the vision or have the confidence in you or whoever to stay the course, then it will fall. And I guess even in general terms, they say most businesses don't last the first 12 months, right?
Yeah.
So as you say, we're in mid-June at the moment. A lot of this hit, as they say, fever pitch this time last year. So there will be many that are not here now, but they were never going to add value anyway. They were just probably frustrated with being quarantined in their homes, and they wanted to vent their frustrations at the system as they saw it, but they never actually cared much about the problem itself. For example, you're probably similar, I shouldn't assume, but I almost became desensitized to seeing black men or black women or young black people being battered and killed and all types of terrible things on camera. It got to a point where you'd stroll through your timeline and you just expect to see that, and you carry on strolling by. So some people, they didn't hear the dog whistle, as they say. They didn't realize that this was the time to actually make a stand. And the fact that, I mean, you even had one of the things that always stood out to me, and again, sorry if I'm just
No, this is great.
going in the wrong direction, but when I saw, for example, people in Palestine protesting for George Floyd, that's when, if you had any awareness of the problems around the world, that should have been seen as an extremely significant stance, because the people of Palestine, they've been under extreme tragedies and human rights breaches back to back. For people in that position to take time out to protest on behalf of George Floyd, that tells you this is a moment that we all need to appreciate and act accordingly. You know, just to bring it back to your point really of activism. Let's act accordingly. There's a time and a place for everything. There's a time to move left. There's a time to move right. And in this case, if you had any, as I say, if you had any awareness of anything, this is the time to add your contribution. Bring something to the table. You know, bring something meaningful. Bring some soul food. Don't bring some McDonald's. Bring some real substance. You know, and let's do something here. You know, I think. Yeah, it's mandatory.
For sure, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That might end up being the sort of caption that I use for your entry. Bring some soul food.
No McDonald's, no.
Exactly. No, good one. Okay, so the final, it's not even a question, but it's just to ask you to complete the following statement, which is, my activism is inspired by...
Oh, you want me to add on to that, right?
Just to complete that statement.
Okay.
So my activism is inspired by
the desire for change. Yeah, the desire for change. Absolute mandatory. You know, there is no alternative. I'm a family man myself. I'd like my children to take this organization that I've just started to put together with my other partners, and take it to another level, and their children and so on and so on, and expand and evolve and evolve. You know, it's not even, this organization, for example, is not even about me. I mean, myself and my team, most of the time we've not necessarily opted to be on camera. That's not what that's not the fundamentals. The fundamentals is to provide a service to the people. So yeah, it's there is no option here. This is what we must do. This is what we have to do. This is what we are completely committed to, you know, and that's just that.
Absolutely. You know, I always say the same thing, just as you said. You know, I say that the alternative is no alternative. That there isn't an alternative. So that is why we are relentless. That is why this appetite that we have for change is, you know, an insatiable one. That is why it literally costs us, you know, our personal time, and that is why we literally sell ourselves out for it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I completely get you from that side. So thank you for that. Those are all the questions.
No problem.